Religion, women, and governance are intricately linked, shaping how women engage in leadership roles across the globe. This interplay of faith, culture, and politics can have profound consequences for women's participation in leadership, both positive and negative. Welcome to the Leading Woman Show Governance Series, brought to you by our sponsors, the National Endowment for Democracy and Luminate. My name is Abosede Jojogan, and today we will discuss religion, women, and governance. In this episode, we will analyze the various ways in which religious norms can act as both barriers and bridges for women aspiring to take on leadership roles. And joining us on this two-part series today is Dr. Esther Longe, a unicorn leader who is committed to reconnecting people with God and empowering them to embrace and shine their God-given lights. Our next guest is Pastor Itwa Igodalo. He's the founder and senior pastor of Trinity House Church, an accountant, a thinker, a social reformer, and a writer. Our final guest on the show today is Pastor Godman Akinlabi, the lead pastor of the Elevation Church, a non-denominational church founded in 2010 with a God-given mandate to make greatness common. He's a highly sought-after speaker, trainer, and consultant. Now, before we dive into the conversation, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. So welcome to all of you, my amazing guests. Today we're going to be talking about religion, women, and governance. So, you heard my intro. There is this conflict that we have with religion and what societal constructs have defined gender roles to be. So I want to start with you, Dr. Esther. You're the female here. Would like to get your perspective. What is this conflict? And is there even a conflict?
Thank you for having me, Abosede. It's such a pleasure to be here with my esteemed co-panelists. I think that there is a conflict. I do not think that it was God's original plan, because if you look at even Jesus, who is, if you're a Christian, he's our savior, you'll find that, whilst he had the 12 disciples, he had a strong women ministry, right? He had the Marys, he had Martha, so he was a proponent for females, right? And in fact, when he resurrected, the first people to encounter him were females. So I don't think that if we're following the Bible, right, females should be seen as less than. However, like you rightly said, I don't want to say the challenges have come from when people have taken certain powers and interpreted them to suit whatever agenda or purpose was prevailing at the time. And so you find that it then becomes something that we're working to change, where, it was women should be seen and not heard. That translated into the church. Women should not teach based on a verse that Paul shared, But if you look at the totality of the Bible, you find that they were leading women. There's Esther, there's Ruth, there's Naomi. There's so many leading women exemplified in the Bible. So I think what we're finding now with not just this amazing pastors on this table, but with a new generation of leaders in the church, is that they realize that a disservice has been done to the women, and they're actually actively trying to correct it. So you'll find that even in, I don't know about this table, but you find that in some leadership teams in churches, majority of the leadership team are women. Majority of the people supporting the pastor are women, just like with Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, so those are my thoughts about that.
Brilliant. Pastor Godman, I want to come to you.
Okay.
I don't know what you were thinking when you were hearing all of that, but I mean, in your opinion, what role has religion played in shaping gender roles and how we see it today?
I think, on one hand, religion has not helped. On the other hand, religion has helped. So when you look at it from the traditional standpoint, especially of orthodoxy and the Orthodox churches, religion sort of maybe misrepresented gender roles quite a bit. I mean, up till a couple of months ago, the Southern Baptist Convention in the US still deregistered a few churches for putting women in leadership positions.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, you could check it out online. Pastor Rick Warren of Saddleback Community Church in South Orange County, California. Saddleback Community Church was deregistered from the Southern Baptist Convention because he ordained women ministers. Wow. Yeah, so when you look at it from those, and that does not mean that the Southern Baptist is a bad denomination or anything. All I'm saying is that there are traditional beliefs that have been held by similarly, Orthodox churches or traditional churches. They're struggling to move away from that standpoint.
Right.
Whereas the non-denominational churches of the charismatic Pentecostal extraction are more open, because what we saw in the New Testament is that women were given the opportunity to express themselves more openly. Yes. Though in the writings of Paul, you read where he made mention of something like women should be quiet and and be quote unquote subjugated to men's leadership. Yeah, and that they shouldn't ask any questions. They should go home and ask their husbands and stuff like that. But you and I know that life has evolved. Even when Paul was writing that, he wasn't writing as a matter of revelation. He was writing as a matter of pandering to culture, the culture of the day. Those are two different things.
Thank you so much for that, because I feel like this is one of those things that we don't hear enough of. But Pastor Etua, as you're listening to that, and you're thinking about, you're a social reformer, you're interested in governance. When you hear that, how has this sort of delicate conflict done us a disservice to our governance as a nation?
Well, quite significant, and thank you for having me on this panel. Quite significantly, because we have found by practice and by experience, almost retrospectively, that women have played very critical roles, even culturally, in nation building. I come from, on my mother's side, the Ife descent, and there's a lady called Moremi that we all talk about, that when the men were backing off, she had the courage to push forward and saved the town from advancing conflict, when you go to Zaria, there's a lady called Amina that did something significant also. And then in the Bible, there was Deborah, who even threatened the man and said, be careful, you better come with me, otherwise they will say that it was a woman that took the battle. And she went ahead and did what she had to do. So I think we've left quite a significant part of our lives outside by not allowing women to play the roles they should have played. When my wife died a few years ago and were asking me how I felt, I said I felt like walking on one leg and flying with one wing, that I felt totally incomplete because she gave me significant support and advice. And sometimes some of the sermons they heard me preach, actually she had developed overnight. So it was her voice, well, it was her thinking, it was my voice. So, and she did quite a lot in many areas. And what would our lives have been, or my life have been, if I had subjugated or prevented or limited that depth and that strength. So I come from first-hand experience. My mother also was the first female permanent secretary in Nigeria, probably in Africa. And my father allowed her to be. And she played a very significant role, not just in Western Nigeria, but in Nigeria. And she's still, till tomorrow, a rallying point for family and for women in my neck of the woods. So we must apologize to the women.
We accept the apology.
And I would like to lead that vanguard if I can.
Yes.
But having said that, I want the women to push a bit more.
Right.
Somebody said power is not served a la carte. You have to go in there, grab it, and run with it.
Well, we've been trying, and I have to tell you that we have not been very successful. But Pastor Godman, I want to come to you and talk a little bit about how religious institutions can support and promote women's leadership, the type that Pastor Ito is saying that we should have, and even saying women should, take it, but who's supporting us? Is our church supporting us? Is our family supporting us? Are people cheering us on? Or are they saying, who's going to take care of your children? That's not what a woman should do.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right. There's a lot more that the church can do. And it starts from encouraging our men, just like Pastor Ito said, to give their women some rite of passage. And it starts from the home. As a pastor, I love for a lot more women to function in the leadership of our church. But I need the cooperation of the men. Yeah, because you can't usurp authority over a man in his own house.
That's right.
So when men become more open, so it's still our responsibility to preach it to them and to help them to understand it, that God wants to use your spouse. And that will be of no disservice to you. Your spouse will continue to honor you, take care of your children, but she's so multi-talented that she can do a lot, and just seeing her from one perspective will not help her emergence. If you will understand that she's multifaceted, she can function at work, she can function in church, she can function in the community, in the society, and she can still take care of her kids. We say it all the time that women are built to be multitask.
Multitask, yes.
Where men seem to have tunnel vision, and we we want to focus on something, we want to look through one thing, but a woman can be cooking and be feeding her baby, and at the same time be knitting on one hand. You understand? Everything is just going on. Side by
Attending
side.
to guests also.
And be attending to guests, or be thinking of what to wear to work
church,
tomorrow or
work
church tomorrow.
tomorrow, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So everything is going together, and that's how women are built. So that understanding will help us. But let me add one more thing to it, and that's that we also need to model it. So, for instance, if you go to a church and men take the day, let me put it that way, it does not portray a church that is really promoting gender equality. Exactly. So who are the people that are responsible for the most important things in this church? If all of them are men, if we sit, for instance, in pastor's board or minister's meeting or deacon's board, and everybody
Pastor
on the
Godman
deacon's
is
board,
preaching you people.
everybody on the deacon's board are men. And then that means we're just mouthing gender equality. We're not modeling it. And those are two different things.
Word.
Yeah, we need to go beyond mouthing it to modeling it. So it's part of what I believe church needs to model to the society.
Absolutely.
And then from then, maybe our politicians will see it, our corporate leaders will see it, and be able to emulate. Yeah.
Dr. Esther, when you hear that, are you excited? And are you a little like, okay, like how is that going to happen? Or how are you receiving that? And what do you think religious institutions must do?
No, I do. I'm super excited. And as he was speaking, I was thinking about what he was saying, even in light of my own life, right? So my grandfather was principal of King's College, right? And I remember even at that young age, when I'm speaking to him, his attention is focused on me as if I am the only person in the world that he wants to listen to.
Affirmation.
My dad is a professor of political science, right? And he's talking to me, in fact, when I was growing up, the only way you knew that he was writing a letter was because he signed it yours sincerely. Because I was like, this is an academic treatise. I didn't understand it, but he didn't dumb it down. He made me rise up to that level, right? And even now, my husband is somebody who champions a lot of the work that I do. So the first time that I came across, people having issues with strong women, I remember I was doing my PhD and this lady said to me, "You're doing PhD. Boys will run, oh." And I said to her, boys will run, but men will stay.
Yes.
So back to Pastor Godman's point, it is what you show people that becomes the norm. It is what you show people that becomes acceptable. And when we talk about corporate people and politicians and politics, taking a lead from that, guess what? They're in the same church. They're in the same church. So whatever you want to see in society, we model it in the church. There's such a strong correlation between what happens in the church and what happens in society. They are not, disparate spheres. So even the people that go to government is from inside the church now. So whatever we want to see, we have to model it. It has to be, like he said, more than speaking. We have to show our children. And it's not even, and I hear this about the deacon board and everything, but even from Sunday school. What are you teaching? How are you teaching? How are you even saying, oh, sit down, you're a girl, let the boys speak? Do you know what I mean? Like, even from a young age, let the girls believe that there is nothing impossible for them to do. So when they hit misogyny or when they hit, they're like, where did this come from? This is not what I am used to. And I think that's how we begin to change the narrative.
Brilliant. We're having a fabulous conversation. I don't know if you're enjoying it as much as me, but let's take a short break and we'll continue when we get back. Welcome back. We still have our guests in the studio and we'll be continuing our conversation. Pastor Ito, I want to come to you and start to think about how can women actually draw strength from their faith to pursue leadership roles?
Well, that's a very, very good point. And the problem with a lot of us, not just women, even men inclusive, is that we don't study our faith. We don't study whatever we believe in enough. There are even some religions where you're not expected to study. Just listen to whatever they tell you and take it and run with it. But the Bible is there. My meditation this morning was how powerful the Bible is for me as a book. Maybe the Quran represents the same for my brothers on the other side. But everything you need for life and living is in the Bible. Every example that you need to model your life after is in the Bible. I was speaking at a business seminar a couple of days ago, and we were talking also about ethics and morality and governance. And I went to Solomon, and I said how God gave Solomon wisdom and the capacity to run a government that made everybody very happy. And there were Muslims and there were Christians there, and everybody could relate and connect. If women could study a bit more, could work a bit more, could understand a bit more, could take the nuggets out of that word and use it to empower themselves and run with it. If us, the pastors, both male and female, could do exactly the same thing. In my church, when women are quarreling with their husbands for lack of provision, I say, have you read Proverbs chapter 31?
How she was buying the lands and taking over.
Woman, we say, that's not my portion. He's a man, he must provide. I say, yes, we want him to provide. There are ups and there are downs. There are seasons when the man can provide. You step in and you do the work and you provide and you prove. We pray.
Has it received by the men?
Well, I don't know, but but we just have to be realistic, and it's a question of role play and partnership, and each person pulling their weight and playing their roles. So I would like to see women rise up a bit more and take charge a bit more, and also not themselves subjugate themselves. So on one part it's okay, on another part no, it's not right. Give us equal rights. On one part no, we don't want responsibility. No. You have to take the responsibility with the reward. and you have to be ready to rise up and do what you need to do. And a final point, in my professional office in the accounting practice, we're trying to interview and recruit some people for a job. My head of HR is a lady, and then this lady came, she was pregnant, she did very well, and I thought she was a good hire. My head of HR, the lady, said, we can't hire her. I said, why? He said, she's pregnant. I said, what do you expect her to be? She's married, she must be pregnant. I said, well, let's wait for her. She has her baby. Maybe in 6 months' time, we'll consider. I said, not on your life and not on my watch. In 6 months' time, she may not be available, and this is good talent. Hire her. I said, okay, if you insist, on the proviso that after this baby, she's not going to have babies for another. I said, no. She can have as many babies as she wants. She must just report to work and do her work.
That she uses her brain for because it's accounting.
And we'll give her the right medical time to recuperate. But we want her to do a job. And part of her role in life is to have babies. So I'm not going to bond her to say, so the discrimination sometimes even comes from the women themselves.
Because we have been conditioned and socialized. So
we have to reprogram everything.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Dr. Esther, as you're hearing that, what is going through your mind, and how can women draw inspiration from their faith?
So as I was listening, I did have multiple thoughts. And one of the thoughts I had was, I think there's sometimes when we don't even know what we don't know. So, for example, there are things that women, because it's just subtle things that we see on a daily basis, so we are more aware. So, for example, my husband and I can go somewhere, right? And then we enter into the building and say, two of us enter, do. Good afternoon, sir. Say, obviously, I'm invisible right now. But these are things that you don't see. But I'm also very big on introspection. So, as a personal example of my introspection today, while we're waiting to come up here, I was sitting in the green room and the only female, right? And I saw how the men found commonalities, common ground, and they were speaking. I, on the other hand, was running through the questions, thinking about, okay, what am I going to say? Okay, I have to attend to this, I have to attend to that. And I was like, Esther, this is that. This is what we're talking about, right? The men find if it's football, they're going to find to bond with, they'll do that. If it's this commonality, and you have all those points, but you're like, I'm here to do a job. And so you now realize that, if that was the only interaction, the men have walked away with a network, they walked away with value, they walked away with the burgeoning relationship. And if they remember you as the one who wore the green outfit, right? So as women, we have to practice this kind of introspection. How do I show up? If I show up, how do I want to be remembered, right? Even faith. They call me Unicorn Leader. I'm sure people, what does that mean? One of the coaching programs that I run is called the Unicorn Program, and it's for women. But guess what? We're still stuck. The whole program, from beginning to end, is to get people to understand that Matthew 5, from 14 to 16, that says you are the light of the world, not the light of the church. And you are a city set on a hill, so you not hide your light under a bushel. For a lot of people, they're like, but if I'm being visible, am I not seen to be too much? Meanwhile, the scripture says, let your light so
shine.
So shine before men that they see. So there has to be something about what you do that is visible to the people that are watching.
Right.
And they give glory not to you for your education, for your articulation, for your whatever it is, they give glory to God, meaning that they're like, hold the line. Something is going on here. I know you are brilliant, I know this, but how is your life shining? How are you making all these moves that they cannot attribute the glory to you? They must realize that it's a higher power that is backing you up. So, like Pastor Itwa said, if you do study your Bible, if you read, you realize that even Isaiah 60 that we like to quote, arise and shine, is a command. It's not a prayer point. It's a command. Arise is a command. Stand up.
It's a do word.
Stand up.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay. Pastor Godman, you heard that. How can women draw inspiration from their faith? And we've heard so much, but I don't know if you wanted to lend any thoughts to that.
Yeah, just to add to the brilliant exposition from Pastor Itua, Dr. Esther Longe, it's important for women to see themselves the way God sees them. Yeah. Not to be seen as second fiddle or somebody who should always be in hiding or don't show yourself or you don't have anything to offer and all that. From the Christian faith, for instance, you can choose to look at the part of the Bible where there was a bit of quote unquote cultural innuendos that could be misconstrued as a misconception of the role of the female gender, like what I talked about earlier about the writings of the Apostle Paul, in the epistles, and all that. Because in the life of Christ, we saw women that were very prominent.
Absolutely.
And even when people were trying to, subjugate women around him, like the woman who came to anoint him with oil and all. People were trying to disdain, what she was doing, but Christ put it on a very higher level, to say, look, what this woman is doing is important. She's preparing my body for my burial. She's participating in in history and in the writing of my assignment. Another good way to see it, especially for Christian women, and even for women of any religion, is to just look at the part of what your holy book has to say. In the Islamic religion, there were women icons, yeah, and their holy book also portrayed those women as strong women.
Yes.
In the Bible, in Numbers 27 or so, the Bible talks about the daughters of Zelophehad. These were women who, based on culture, the culture of the day, they were not supposed to get any inheritance.
Yeah.
Their father died. So they went to meet Moses, who was the chief commander of the entire Jewish clan, and said, look, are we going to be like this? Our father has stuff. He didn't have any sons. We are the 5 daughters that he left behind. We should inherit, whatever his estate, whatever he has.
Yeah.
And you know what happened? Moses had to go and pray because there was no precedent. So Moses actually had to go and pray. And God spoke to Moses and said, the daughters of Zelophehad, they are correct. Yeah. They must get the inheritance. And so it was like they call it in law, it was locus classicus. It was a new beginning. It was a case that didn't exist before, that they just started. And from that point, they changed. A whole people changed their disposition towards women inheriting their father's estate. Kudos to the daughters of Zelophehad. So today, I believe that we still have daughters of Zelophehad who will be women who will look at the brighter side and not pander to tradition and what has obtained and be able to say, look, we can do this.
Absolutely.
We can be represented. We are here as well.
Pastor Godman deserves a round of applause for that revelation. Because, when you said it's a new beginning, I just felt like Nigeria needs a new beginning, Pastor Itwa. And so I want to be very direct because I don't know when next I will have the privilege of sitting with all of you. How can we inspire godly women to get into politics? And you heard me. It was very specific. Godly women to get into politics.
I'll start with you.
So good.
Dr. Esther. The space is open. And like I said earlier, I don't know if I was here or talking to somebody, my own challenge is why a lot more women are not stepping up and stepping in and really trying to take the space. Even in terms of statistics, they say you are 52% of our population. It means that if you all support yourselves or support yourself or support that woman statistically, and we have free and fair elections and all the women are able to vote proportionately, we should have a female president. And I don't see why not. We've had the Margaret Thatchers, we've had the Golda Meirs, we have the Serena Bernanda Dykes. We've had so many of them that have done extremely well in terms of leadership and governance. In fact, Thatcher was probably the best prime minister of her season and that generation right back off after Churchill. She took on challenges that men were afraid to take on, and she was bold, and she privatized the whole of Britain as best as she could. And she was very strict and very firm. And she did very well. And I believe that a lot of women can do extremely well. And where they've been given opportunity, even in this country, they've done extremely well. There was that lady, her name escapes my mind now. She did very well in NAFDAC or
Yes, Dora
really. She did extremely well. Obi Ezekwesili has done well. The lady in the World Bank,
Ngozi.
my sister Ngozi, has done extremely well. She was.
We want more of them.
whole
We keep
economy.
hearing the same names,
So
and we want
we
more.
want more. We want more. So women should step out, and they must be ready to do the work. You're not going to tell me that you want to do politics. You're a woman. You can't stay late at night. Sometimes politics is played at night. People start at 11. They don't end till 4. You may have to adjust your timetable. Talk to your husband, talk to your children, and say, we're going to do this. Because the world is not going to change all the rules
Because
just because. Okay?
I appreciate
or change
that.
all the practices
I
just
appreciate
because. You're not going to be a woman pastor and tell me that, well, the twins are crying, you can't come to church, or you can't do some fast. And we have to do what we have to do. We will make room
Right.
when there's obvious need and all that. But we also must be strong.
must put our hands to
And
the
people
hands to the
that know
plow.
their God must be strong and be
Absolutely.
ready. If you are going to be waiting and waiting and waiting, it's unlikely
That
they
anything.
will yield the space for you. But when you show strength, determination, and so on and so forth, then people will say they're serious. Let's have them on. In our church, I think we have decent gender balance. I was just thinking as somebody was saying it. We do have, I think
So
we have
you're modeling it as Pastor Godman said. You're not just talking about it, you're modeling it. So we have to wrap up soon, and I would love to hear your thoughts, Esther, about how do we encourage godly women to go into politics? Final thoughts.
I think piggybacking off what Pastor Itwa said, because he did make salient points, but what I would add will be we need a raising of sponsors, because even with the men, right? In politics, it is somebody who often speaks for you that says, this person is my candidate, I want you to champion their cause. So we need more men speaking for the women, standing in the gap to say, look, I know this person, they can do the work. Because if we're being honest, one of the disappointments I had in this last electoral cycle was that there were a number of women that I knew that put themselves forward, but then they ended up not even making it to primaries
Yeah.
because they had to take a back seat for another agenda. So putting our money where our mouth is, our sponsorship where our...
We have sponsors. We have
Yes,
sponsors.
we need people that will champion and say, no, in this thing, we want these women. They will do the work. I vouch for them. Not saying, I have a friend, next time you will run. Let us sponsor and then we'll do the job. Just give us the chance.
Absolutely. Pastor Godman, what would be your final thoughts, and how do we get godly women into politics?
I deeply appreciate the two submissions, but I'll add this to it that, most young people today grew up hearing about women's rights and all that, and women rights activists, the Beijing conference
Yes.
back in the day,
Yes.
and all. I think we need to make a transition from right to values.
Right.
Yeah.
So good.
Women have value. Yeah. Pastor Ito was mentioning some of our leading women in this country, Kojo Wella, Dora Quayle, and the likes. The reason why we're still talking about them is because of the value they portend, the value that they have added. One of the greatest contributions that anyone can make to your space is the value you add to yourself, that your space now end up benefiting from. You understand what I'm saying? So when you look at these women, they added value to our space because they added value to themselves. Very well-read, learned, bold, courageous. All that was because they put some deep value in here. Yeah. So it's not about right. It's about fit. Are you fit, for the position? Do you have requisite skills and understanding and wisdom? Can we trust you to deliver? So we shouldn't over pander to right. We should pander more to value. And women must support women to build strength, to gain value. See, our world will be brought to our knees when women show up with value. Value that you cannot, gainsay. You just have to say, look, just like Pastor Ita was saying the other time, they were interviewing for a staff.
Yeah.
This lady was pregnant, but she has what
Value
it takes.
to offer.
Something to offer. So we're not pandering to emotions here. We're dealing with real stuff. This person can deliver. We have to open the door for her to come in. So I think women need to collaboratively build that. And where we are in our world today, most organizations are, rooting for women, women-led businesses, and also let's capitalize on it.
So
And
what
do
I'm
more.
what I'm hearing you say, Pastor Godman, is that new beginning that you described
Yeah.
is coming forth.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you all so much.
I think it's inevitable anyway.
It's inevitable. Well, this was the first half of our two-part series on religion, women, and governance. We'll take the second half when we get back. Joining us now on the second half of this two-part series is Dr. Tochukwu McFoy, a dynamic, creative, and content leader, the founder of Same Energy Global, transforming Christian entertainment through energized music. Our next guest is Rizka Sadiq Lasaki. She's an educationist, administrator, entrepreneur, a communications and literary enthusiast. She's the school director of Guided Path Schools, Lagos. And our final guest is Pastor Akin Akinpelu. He is the lead pastor of the Eden Center, an official member of Forbes Coaches Council, foremost performance coach in Nigeria, and development consultant. Now, I'm sure you cannot wait for us to get back into the second part of this conversation. So we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. So welcome back to the second half of our part two series where we're talking religion, women, and governance. And we have our amazing guests in the studio. Welcome to you all. Rizka, I want to start with you. In the first half, we had a woman share from a Christian perspective how she thinks religion has shaped gender roles. It would be good to hear from you.
Okay.
How your religion has shaped gender roles.
Yes. As a Muslim, religion dictates, our way of life, our conduct, interactions, and of course, for every religion, there are guiding principles. So definitely, interactions with the world, politics, day-to-day lifestyle is dictated by the religion. And really, contrary to popular belief, Islam actually gives a lot of power to the woman. She's the nurturer. She's the the pillar in the home, really, because the man is more out there, so to speak. In leadership as well, it really boils down to individual preferences. And then there's just a bit of guidance as to how you put yourself out there. Are you dressed properly? Are you pacing yourself? Because whether we like it or not, the woman is also the nurturer at home. So balancing both, being out there, taking up responsibility, and also maintaining a good home front, you understand, which, is most important when the chips are down. Those are just the dictates of the religion for women.
I really appreciate the way you put it when you say it dictates our way of life. That is so deep because our way of living is our way of being, right? So it means that it really sort of almost informs then what society becomes, which is what we've seen. So, Dr. Foy, from your perspective, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm excited to have you is that you represent this younger male generation that people are hoping are not bogged down by patriarchal norms. And I wonder, in your opinion, how you think religion has shaped gender roles.
First of all, there's something called the biology of belief. And the biology of belief says that what you believe, your hormones react to. I'm a doctor, so I can share about that. So, for example, if you're always scared, you will release cortisol, and cortisol will make you always withdraw. If you're empowered, you release dopamine, you release oxytocin, and it makes you warm and excited. I'm a Christian by belief, and I think based on numbers, there are more female Christians than male globally. Islam is about the same, but they are more committed female. And I think that our mothers had a different perspective. But I see young people now read about Deborah and get a lot of inspiration from Deborah. They read about Esther. So what I say is, how do you take what you believe? How do you react to what you believe? How do you engage what you believe? I have learned that engagement brings clarity. So the more you engage, the more there's clarity. And I always say your biology also knows your belief. So I think that the Bible is a book for humanity, not gender. It empowers humanity. God made humanity in his image and likeness, not a gender. So I sense that because of knowledge, because of globalization, which has opened up the world, people now see that faith should empower, not bring you down.
That's an amazing point. Faith should
Should empower
empower and not bring you down or hold you back.
Yeah.
So, Pastor Akimpelu, what are your thoughts on how religion has shaped, what we see as gender roles today?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start by saying that I like what he said, that faith should empower. And that's very, very critical. You see, when you have an idea, never think that all that you know is all that there is to know. And the fact is that people who are capable of transferring knowledge to you can also be capable of transferring error to you. So when you look at God from the perspective, the people who chose to interpret God to you, which forms your biology of belief, you may live with that all your life only to find out that
Was error.
you carried a lot of junks in your head. So you can't tell. So every human being is now on a journey of discovery to see how civilization works with faith. So you may decide not to go along with civilization and stay with what you believe. Right? Now, civilization is not dictating to humanity, but it is furthering the conversation on how things should go. So you would find out that it's a curve. As we continue, you'll begin to find out that what exactly is the reason for religion? what is the balance and the perspective of religion to the gender? So, for example, interestingly, I'm a Christian, unapologetically, and he created them male and female.
Equally.
You see that? It tells you that a clear cut catalyst is when you have male and female represented in all things. So it means that that's the catalyst for development. So if you juggle it and you do not bring out the right portion, you are going to create a lot of problems within the system. So I'm of the belief that one of the things faith, religion has come to do is to further conversation as time passes and humans find themselves inside of it and they respond based on civilization.
That's a very, very interesting point that you make there about, religion and civilization, which oftentimes is presented as, and that's why I appreciate what you said, that civilization has not come to dictate to humanity, but it has come to move the conversation forward. So, Rizka, what can religious institutions really do? And as Pastor Akimpolu was talking, thinking, don't we all talk a good talk about it, right? But society hasn't shifted. So, Riska, what can religious institutions really do to support women's empowerment that leads to leadership?
Religious institutions, they can do a lot actually. They are usually the compass. They are the ones we all religious people look up to. We listen to the heads of our religious organizations and seek guidance from them. So when we're talking of something that is not balanced, probably because a particular gender is taking up more than they should, or another gender is not stepping up enough, then there's probably a bit of,
Imbalance.
yes, imbalance and a bit of confusion somewhere. So when we listen to lectures, for instance, and it is clear, it is said, for instance, in Islam, when you go into the history, you will find even during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, you had women in the army with him, fighting with him. You understand, defending the deen. You find women teaching. You understand, teaching even men. You get me? It was based on knowledge. It was based on who could give the best of what. It wasn't necessarily about the gender. You understand? So when we find that even in history, nobody should be telling you to keep quiet when you have something to say. Nobody should be telling you your place is somewhere when, because for every demographic of human beings, you would find some people that fit the mold, and you would find some people that do not fit the exact mold of how you think they should be. How everybody thinks a woman should be. Some people are fine with it. I just want to be a mother and nurture. I'm at home. I'm taking care. That's fantastic. However, some want to have a career, and that means coming out there doing stuff, adding value to humanity in another way. You understand? Some want to, also be want to be at par with the men, creating stuff, building stuff, nurturing stuff, making the world better generally. So it's not really about what the roles as ascribed, the stereotypical roles,
Yes.
but really what we're making of ourselves as time evolves. So the religious institutions need to push that forward, especially with the generations we have now. Nobody's just going to listen to one person say. They would find evidence to support it. Where are you getting this from? Is it your opinion, or is it from the books?
Yes.
And then there's a bit more clarification. It's not just take it and dump it on people.
Yeah.
There's clarification, and then we can verify.
And
So we're not just following hook, line, sinker.
and society moves forward. Dr. Foy, it comes back to your point about when you engage, you clarify. And from your perspective, what do religious institutions need to do? Right? Because we have a new generation, like she's saying, they're going to engage, they're going to confirm. They're just not going to take you hook, line, and sinker. But what do religious institutions need to do to really push this conversation around gender equality?
So I have two daughters. One is 3, one is 1 plus. And they actually can swipe. They were born to swipe. They know how to. I'm like, who taught you this? But the truth is, globalization is the democracy of technology and information. So people, like you say, now know things.
Yeah.
They can Google what Muhammad said through ChatGPT 4 years ago.
That's right.
They know what happened with. So two things. The first thing the church has to do is understand that family life is changing totally, and a woman is key for that. So to train children, we must empower the women differently. Differently. That's number one. Number two, work-life balance is no more balanced because we're remote working. And I remember my mom used to work for the government, maritime. She would come back home by 6 and still cook and still. But they were now you're home having your Zoom call. So the church has to empower women with mental health skills, not in practical mental health skills, how to cope in this era, how to be a digital native, not an immigrant. Mental health skills. Two, we have to collaborate with each other because there's a lot of division in church. And it was sad to, as a doctor, I've had some sad experiences when I practiced because of religious belief about abortion, removing a child. I've had blood transfusion. I've had wild, as I practiced in the military, wild experiences. So we now have to have one church so that we can educate. Because once you're isolated,
Then ignorance can thrive.
fester.
Yes. Brilliant. I mean, so Pastor Akinpelu, as you're hearing that, what are some of the practical things that you're thinking that, the church should do? I mean, in the first half, we heard go beyond talk and actually model it. But what can the church do to really, because, I mean, as you're saying, women are sitting there, they're going to watch us. They are really being held back by their religious beliefs in aspiring, in pushing for something that's bubbling on the inside of them that they can add value.
Okay, so I would say the speak, model, and evaluate approach. It will first start with an engagement. It's going to start with shaping the minds of people, an orientation. And
Which is what we're doing here.
that's the first thing. That's the first stage. So the idea is a lot of us are carrying lots of junks. Maybe for traditional reasons or religious reasons or for any kind of reason. Some people will need to, so families need to relearn. People need to unlearn. People need to get new stuff and understand that, okay, this is what it should be. So orientation is important. Then if you say the churches, then I would say that can we model it? We've got to model it. We've got to show people that this is true, this can work without faking it. Then we must also have like an evaluation practice to check. So for example, people don't ask people, families, how are you doing? How's your family? How's your relationship with your wife? You hear, how's your career? How's business? Hope money is coming in. That's good. So, but how's your relationship with your wife? So if you evaluate, it helps you to understand that these are gaps. Oh, emotional intelligence is a gap. Oh, this is a gap. Oh, so these are the things we can now. This is now going to form the things that would now be retaught again. It becomes a work. So I would say a speak, model, evaluate approach. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, Riska, let me come to you and talk about, how can women, especially women in your faith, draw strength and inspiration to aspire to leadership? I'll tell you a very interesting anecdote from women in politics in Nigeria. It's really, really interesting that women from the north are the most politically involved in this country. Yes, this is based on evidence, by the way. And it's interesting because there are a few reasons for that. One is something called dynastical politics, right? Where your father will stand up from the chair and literally pass it on to you, or your brother or your husband. We don't see it as much, actually, interestingly, in the South, right? Now, but that actually is not representative of what we hear about northern Nigeria, which is hugely and largely informed by its religious beliefs in terms of how women show up. So I guess what I'm asking you is, we do see this dichotomy, and that's why I had to reference that it's dynastical. So it's almost like, well, it's still men authorizing them to lead, is how that is being positioned. But we know that that's not totally true. So how can women draw inspiration from their faith to not come across as, especially with, the girl child, and just talk us through the entire value chain of how women, you know, seemingly based on their religion have been marginalized and continue to be marginalized and not taking up leadership positions?
Okay. First and foremost, to answer that question, it boils down to education. It boils down to having the facts and knowing your precedents. You see, when you're not informed, it's very easy to be confused. Now, as I said, even in the history of Islam, there's always been stories of women taking leadership roles, and they were devout Muslims. They practiced even more than what we're doing now. Some of them lived with the Prophet in his time, and they were able to do those things. When you go into the Quran, you find verses of the Quran where Allah says, to the believing men and believing women, to the fasting men and fasting women, so the references always refer to male and female all of the time. So for someone who is educated, who is a thinking being, who actually wants to be empowered, you have to have the information. So when you look at that, then there really isn't anything that should stop you. Educating yourself, educating the generations to come, letting them know. For instance, as a woman, they would ask us when we were younger, would you rather be a girl? But those debates, and they say advantages of being a woman. And I've never chosen being a man, seriously. I love it because I see it as a privilege. Probably I was quite tomboyish when I was little. So, you'd want to do some things that were considered male or considered more for boys. But it stopped at that because I just felt that I was, I am special in a privileged position. And that comes from the point of education. And there's also something in the Quran that says, raise a female child, raise two, and you get like the highest positions of heaven, for instance. Raise them from when they're small, educate them, make sure that they are protected, and this is it. And the person asks the Prophet, what if I have one? And he says, if you do the same, you get the same benefits. So why on earth would one think that that gender should be repressed? What you mentioned about the North, it happens for both the male and the female. So it's a kind of exchange of power. You understand? Exchange of tradition. We have not been so deliberate, down here. However, things are changing as well, because it is when you realize what you have that you want to hand it down. And you have examples like that, even in countries around the world where, titles, heritage, leadership is handed on from generation to generation. So I would say start with education, empower yourself with the facts, and then there's no limits.
Absolutely. That is a perfect point to take a break. And when we come back, we'll continue this really, really interesting and enlightening conversation. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So, we're wrapping up this conversation, which has really been very enlightening. And what I would like each of you to share is, how can we encourage more godly women? And I feel like in Nigeria, that applies to everybody, right? People. But specifically, godly women to get into leadership, specifically political leadership. Asakinfele, let's start with you.
Oh, okay. I was thinking I was going to come last. All right. So how do you encourage godly women,
Yes.
to be engaged
In leadership,
in leadership,
especially political leadership.
political
Because
leadership?
one of the things that holds them back is their religious beliefs. Is this idea that as a woman who believes in, whether I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim, that is not territory that I'm supposed to take. It is the preserve of men.
So this is my idea. If you are going to bring about that encouragement, we would need to be culture
Culture
disruptors.
disruptors. I wanted everybody to hear that.
So, and this is what I mean. There's a traditional part of it, there's a religious part of it, and there's an orientation part of it. It means that if we're going to encourage them, so for those who have traditional patterns that a woman should not be involved in such, it means that we should be getting ready to be how do I put it now? We're going to be misinterpreted, but you know that it's going to be for the right cause. You're going to break traditional barriers. You're going to break certain limiting religious barriers. So it still comes back to information. There is a wildfire information that needs to go out to families and to young ladies to say that, come, this is why you are made. These are the possibilities in your being, and this is what you can become if you open up yourself to these things. And let them see the advantages, show them where it has worked, the people that worked it out, and tell them to model their lives.
Fantastic.
And the other part would be that teach those things through the scriptures. Teach it through the scriptures. Dr. Foy was saying, people want to learn about Deborah. Can you teach it in a very contemporary way that they can connect with it? People want to hear about Elizabeth. People want to hear about Esther. People want to hear about Ruth. Teach it in a very, very fantastic way. So, for example, there were 5 women mentioned in the lineage of Jesus who were not members of his family, and they were engrafted. And it was just because those women dared to be different. So, because they dared to be different, they didn't have to be genetically connected to the lineage. But guess what? Knowledge brought them into that lineage. So it tells you that if you open up yourself to possibilities, even as a woman, you can become whatever you want to become.
That is really,
so
really
far, so
powerful. That is powerful. He deserves a round of applause. Krista, what would you say?
Okay, encouraging women,
Yes.
to go into
Especially, godly women, like
Godly
people who
women.
believe in their faith. And that is a huge part of their identity, remember, their way of being, as you said earlier.
Exactly. So I'll start with the verse of the Quran that says, God will not change a condition of a people except they change it by themselves. So when you want something done, He has just handed it to you. Get it done. I started at the beginning by saying we have a manual that doesn't say don't do it. It just says follow the principles, guide yourself. And all of these principles is not for anything other than to protect you. So if you can follow the principles, then you can go ahead and do it. There are 5 women that are promised paradise in the Quran. The first is Khadija, the wife of the prophets. At 40, she was a business mogul, if I can use the contemporary words to describe her. Some of the richest men had caravans of 5 camels max. She had like 10 times of that.
Wow.
And she was running a thriving business even before she met and married the prophet. What example do you need? This is someone that is a business person, controlling so much. Another person is Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh. She was at the background, but she was controlling so much. And she remained steadfast. She didn't fall into the tyrannical leadership of her husband. He was such a tyrant. But in the background, she was calling shots, she was making decisions. She almost lost her life for that. But she held on. And for that, she was rewarded with the promise of paradise. So we have so many of them
Examples.
that are examples of women who have done things, who have gotten things done. So I would say don't lose your faith.
As an excuse.
You understand? Don't let things that are seen, probably because of misconceptions, as hindrances. The hijab at times is seen as an hindrance, but what it covers is your head and probably your body, not your brains.
I love it. I love it.
I needed to clap for that.
Absolutely. No, Rizka, thank you so much. Dr. Foy, can you top that?
So in the Christian faith, when God chose to save humanity, he didn't choose a man, he chose a womb.
Hadassah.
He chose a womb. He chose a womb. He chose Mary's womb. He said, man, hey, hold on. I would deposit the solution of the world in a woman's womb. In Hebrew, a womb means mercy. Because it means that for 9 months, a child is there doing nothing.
As in.
And she can incubate the child and give birth to the child. The problem, I would say, is trauma. Trauma are the bad things that happen to you and the good things that happen for you. And most women are traumatized.
Sorry, please, can you take that again?
Traumas are the bad things that happen to you and the good things that didn't happen for you. And most women are traumatized. They're traumatized because they've gone through bad things, and when they saw people that could do it, it didn't happen. So they pull back. I would chip in. The first thing is information disruption. The second thing with the hijab, brilliant ma, is think. But I think the final thing I would say is believe. Is believe. Because I always tell people in my practice, the opposite of being responsible is not irresponsible, it's trauma. You were made perfect. Something is making you not perfect.
So something making you dysfunctional.
Dysfunctional. And you are irresponsible. You're not responding right. So belief is important. You have to feed your belief system. You have to curate. Because there are people who believe they are the ones that will change Nigeria,
Yes.
women. But if you don't guard your belief, if you don't customize what you take, if you don't make sure that you are feeding yourself with just
Constantly.
you're going to be traumatized again. So it is your responsibility to control knowledge. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, on that note, we will take a break, and when we get back, we'll be thanking our guests. We'll be back shortly. On this note, I would like to thank all our distinguished guests, Dr. Esther Longer, Pastor Itwa Igodalo, Pastor Godman Akinlabi, Dr. Tochukwu McFoy, Mrs. Rizka Sadiq Lasaki, and Pastor Akin Akinpelu. We appreciate you for being a part of this really, really informative and enlightening episode. And of course, to our live audience, you have been simply amazing. To our viewers watching today's episode, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us across all social media platforms at Will and Global. Please like, share, and leave us a comment. And of course, you know I will not leave without telling you that women's leadership can change everything, everywhere. See you next week.